For over 50 years, Salem High School students and community members have competed, performed, graduated, and gathered on Grant Field. As with any facility, over time, annual routine maintenance is not enough to ensure that we have safe, adequate facilities for our community and students. Who knows better the impact the conditions of Grant Field are having on our students than those who use it day to day?
I got here in the early 1980s, and Grant Field was one of the best football fields in the state, second only to Memorial Field in Concord. And it was well maintained, it was always green.
I've been involved with being on Grant Field for 20 plus years at this point. I played in the early 90s, late 80s, Rams, and then through high school, and then coaching as well, football. I've noticed that the field has deteriorated over time. The district over the last 10, 15 years has done a decent job of making it playable, but you can't play if it's underwater, you can't play if it's mud. And when I coached, it was certainly a safety concern for my players.
So the goalie has to move fast on their feet, and all the mud makes it so slippery that they just fall whenever they try to move, or that just that area gets so muddy and it gets all over your stick, and it just gets hard to maneuver the ball and move it where you want it to go.
We've always had games played in the rain on Grant Field, and it takes a temporary beating, but our ground crew then comes back and replaces displaced sod and mends it and allows it to heal, if that's the right word, and it doesn't tolerate that anymore. I think that the swamp at the end has something to do with it. We've always had a wet area down by the flagpole and the shot put area, but it lasts longer and longer, or it takes longer and longer for that to go away. So it's changed over time. I know the fields have all kinds of water abatement built into the fields. There's drainage culverts all over the fields, but they just don't seem to be able to handle the water like they used to.
It is really tough. It's hard to practice, it's hard to recover from games. Even the mud made it hard to, some kids were getting hurt, you're sliding a lot, you're using more muscles than you have to. The
biggest concern for me in a sports medicine purview is that when it's wet, it's slippery, and when it's slippery, we have more injuries, and that's what the science tells us, and that's what our experience has been, that a turf that's dry and appropriately watered is a firm turf. It doesn't give away when kids cut on it. And when it's wet all the time, it's slippery, the turf does give way. It's a greater chance for kids to lack control and therefore have collisions and lack the ability to catch themselves and maintain their balance.
So it's probably one of the worst fields, one of the worst high school fields that our team plays on. And especially after rain and stuff, it gets all muddy and it's hard to play on. People are slipping everywhere. Passes don't go where we want to. So it's hard to get a good competitive game going on the field.
We have to rehearse on Grant Field. That's the only place that we can actually do what we need to do. And because of the conditions of the field, even though we rehearse 2 nights a week, we're only allowed on the field 1 night a week. So we spend 1 night on the field. The second night, we kind of work on the track a little bit, but it's kind of not the same. So that's an impact.
As a color guard, we travel, and I've seen other arenas and fields compared to ours. It's definitely a big difference with the layout and being able to reach the audience in new ways. And some of our shows, they have props and tarps, and due to weather conditions, we haven't been able to use them all the time. We're very hindered in our performance and our practice schedule, and it's definitely been a rough commitment trying to work around what the field needs.
I know at the last game this past season, the field was too muddy for us to perform, so we just had to stay on the track and didn't get to perform our halftime show.
Over the years, I've had several students who have never been able to be in the bleachers with the band, even though they were members of the band, because they may have been in a wheelchair, and that's kind of an issue. We've always worked around it, and the students are always really good about trying, putting on a good face, but I know they would like to be up with the rest of the ensemble. So it would be nice if we could be handicap accessible.
From what I understand today, the turfs are more of a sand base that is the foundation for the field. And then the grass itself has a longer blade. If I'm not mistaken, the blade itself is 4 or 5 inches long, and then they have this infill material. The infill is some kind of rubber material, crumble rubber. It's mixed with sand and some other materials so that it drains well, but it seems to be more user-friendly now. The older turfs created fabulous traction, but to the point where we saw a lot of ACL injuries, knee injuries. And my understanding is that the turf now still drains well and provides good traction, but it's more normal to what we would see in a natural turf, so we don't have the same kind of fixation injuries that we were seeing in the 1980s with those turfs. So from what I've read, there does not seem to be a larger injury rate with the artificial turfs compared to the natural turfs. There have been phases where the infill material was ground up tires, so there was some contamination worries, but again, from what I've read recently, those have been handled by using different materials that don't hold those same kind of risks.
Yeah, I like turf a lot more. It's just a lot easier to move. You're constantly on the same surface. You don't have to worry about any like other obstacles that you might randomly find. It's all the same. You don't really have to focus as much as on where you're running as to like where you're on a field that's just grass. There might be something you have to watch out for.
So I just think it's time. We're there. And I think it's going to be better for our programs in terms of keeping kids in the right surface at the right time. Let's get them outside when they should be outside and not playing baseball and softball and lacrosse in a gymnasium.
On March 12th, we ask that you exercise your civic right and go vote. You can find more information regarding the Grant Field project on the Salem School District website. Thank you.